My name is Paul Bear. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's go into it today, and I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. This is a self-custody wallet that's very easy to use and set up. You guys can just jump over to tangem.com, their website, and of course, get your wallet. It's a card, and it works with your phones, whether you have an Apple phone or an Android phone. It doesn't matter. You guys can start your self-custody journey over there and get the 3-card set. It's going to help you out because that way you get an extra. I'm always wanting an extra one around when I'm doing trades. So it's a way to go. Check it out. It's very easy to use, and use our link. It does help us out. All right, so let's get into a few points today. Today we're going to kind of have a little bit of a DEX battle. And what is the ultimate DEX? Well, you have to look at the Titan out there, and that of course is Uniswap. Uniswap sitting at almost 27 billion in volume right there, and of course their overall total volume right there at 3 billion. So Uniswap, everybody understands that, very flexible, lots of chains. Everybody's probably used it. If you're on Solana, then you're most likely using something like Jupiter. Jupiter also another very popular DEX for trading altcoins, memes, you name it. One of the best out there. And of course, both of these have really slick apps. Then you've got Cetus. If you are in the SWE network, this is the one for you. And of course, SWE not as large, but it definitely has some activity going over there with total value lock right about 195 and trading volume about 131 million. So with all that, I wanted to kind of take a look at the other big one in the pack, and that of course is Dexalot. Dexalot right here. And the interesting thing here, if you look at the 24-hour volume, about 186 million. So to me, I look at this and say, oh wow, this is the one that might have some opportunity. So we wanted to invite their head of strategy onto the show. Let's get him in. How's it going?
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for having me. It's going really well. Super excited to be here.
So listen, I'm going to learn a lot about what's happening within the Dexalot ecosystem. One of the things I want to kind of compare to, if you look at the top 10 chains and then you kind of compare the overall volume, Dexalot's holding their own down there at number 11. So I was very impressed because most of these are chains. I mean, these are not DEXs, these are chains. So that in itself, now granted, there is a big difference there once you fall outside the chains themselves, but the big advantage here, I think, is the fact that there's a big appetite for this. Tell me a little about what you guys are trying to do. Give me a little bit about your overview and some goals that Dexalot's after.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having on the show. I'm a big fan, super excited to be here. So Dexalot, as you correctly pointed out, is a standalone liquidity network. Okay, the best way to think about it is, and I'm going to give you a cliche one-liner, we are the liquidity layer for the world. And that's the intention, right? We're a big believer in multi-chain future. We're a big believer in application-specific networks. If you put these two together, we are a liquidity and trading specific network designed to be the most capital efficient offering that can serve that liquidity out to any other networks as well. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you about what you just showed, those chains that you showed have a little bit of additional volume that they're recording because of the liquidity that we serve out to them, okay?
Right.
We ourselves have a liquidity layer that produces volume, but we also serve the liquidity, which translates as additional volume to those networks as well.
I'm looking at this list right here, and I see this capital efficiency category. And if you look at Dexalot, you guys are right there as one of the most capital efficient within it. Absolutely. And first of all, explain capital efficiency to me.
Yes.
How does that apply to a DEX?
Yes. So the easiest way to think about capital efficiency is for you and me as an end user to get a good price for a certain amount of trade size that I want to do. How much capital does the exchange or the underlying solution need to have? Okay. There are multiple types of exchanges, as you know. AMMs, as was invented by Uniswap, very prominent solution. And originally it was created to solve a protocol level problem. And obviously in the capital markets, we have the central limit order style exchanges. Capital efficiency in the context of these two different types means that one exchange, the AMM style exchanges, need a lot more capital to produce the same price. And central limit order book style exchanges need a lot less capital, albeit a little bit more technical capability, to produce the exact same price.
Okay.
Now, said simply, you need $1 billion to produce a tight price on an AMM. You need $5 million in the case of Dexalot to produce a better price at a better depth in the case of Dexalot.
All right, so you just explained the efficiency and also kind of the CLOB, which everybody kind of refers to it. But the question I have is when you use Dexalot, and I guess this is more of a user, I won't call it restriction, but it's a different way of doing it. You go to Uniswap, it's connecting to wallets. You know, you've got that flexibility here. With Dexalot, now I've got to deposit funds, which is a little bit of a different loophole and hurdle that I've got to. So explain why that is, and is there any plan to change that?
Absolutely. So Dexalot actually has two core products. Core product number one is exactly what you're describing. It's the central limit order book, where the user experience, admittedly, is worse, but it's equivalent to what centralized exchanges have. You have a wallet, you have assets, you deposit it to a smart contract. Unlike centralized exchanges, you deposit it to a smart contract, and that smart contract allows you to enter, buy, and sell orders. It is a lot more capital efficient. It is a lot more compatible for market makers who provide the liquidity. But as you said, much worse UX. We recognize this quite early. We have a second core product called SimpleSwap, which essentially eliminates the user's need to go through that deposit, wait for it to deposit, enter orders user experience, and mimic the exact user experience that Uniswap invented, which is a click and trade experience. So we have that capability today. The difference versus an AMM is you trade directly against the liquidity we have in the club with a single click without ever needing to know about our network, without ever needing to know about bridges, and everything is atomic. You click, you trade, you're done. So we provide that capability as well. And it is very important to acquire users, as you correctly pointed out.
So I think a lot of people are trying to understand, because DEXs, of course, play a huge role in these altcoin heated markets. Everything from meme tokens to even if you're trying to just move within an ecosystem, like, you know, if you look at what's happening on SWI or what's happening on Solana, what's happening on Base, all of those have very efficient models for the more active trader, and also for a lot of new people who are maybe going into a decentralized exchange for the very first time, you know, and don't really completely understand the difference. But of course, Avalanche has really been able to get a lot of ground under it in terms of development. They're, of course, the new L1s within the Avalanche ecosystem, subnets, many people refer to them. But essentially, you've got a whole bunch of chains that will be able to apply to what's happening over on Dexalot. I'm looking at supported networks. Avalanche, of course, right there on top. Arbitrum, Base. What is the likelihood of us seeing more supported networks here, and how long?
Extremely high. I will tell you this. You pointed out Avalanche, right? Avalanche is the underlying technology that we use. But as I said earlier, we're a big believer in the multi-chain future. So the short answer is you're going to see a lot more networks there. A very simple example, I will not, go out and officially name anything because, some of these things aren't released, but imagine big games launching on their own networks. They are game-specific networks that will exist, but their token, their underlying economy will still need liquidity. Our architecture allows us to directly integrate their token or even their product, or we allow our tech to be integrated directly into them because we're a standalone network that can directly go out. Like I said, we serve the liquidity out to them. Okay. Separately, as you said, general purpose networks, Monad is one we're interested in. Solana is one we're interested in. There's quite a number of new ones coming, Move. So we're looking at all of these. And, one of my coworkers always say we're targeting at least 10 more in the next year. So let's put it that way.
Well, I think the flexibility of that is going to make, you look at just the expansion of what Uniswap has been able to do when they start adding on that flexibility and interoperability. It does expose the networks out there in terms of the number of players, but also regions around the world. I want to jump back because I forgot something that I wanted to hit on, and that's the DIP incentives. When I'm looking at the Dexalot platform, you've got these zones within here, and this kind of shows you these DIP incentives right here that I'm showing on screen. Let me kind of see if I can zoom in on that a little bit for you guys. But if I hover over those, you'll be able to see some DIP incentives. Explain that and why that works so unique within the Dexalot system.
Absolutely. And you literally hit the nail on the head. DIP, or Dexalot Incentive Program, is one of the key reasons as to you or our users or people seeing big growth in the Dexalot side, okay? Now, going back to the AMM examples, AMMs create incentives for people to bring in their capital and lock it within the system. And the system uses that capital to provide prices for people who need to do trading. In our case, we don't need to provide incentives to bring a lot of capital. Why? Because we're capital efficient. Our market makers and our existing users have enough capital in the system that would allow for the same or better price to already exist. Therefore, the Dexalot Incentive Program was designed to bring in liquidity rather than capital. There is a subtle difference, right?
Yeah.
What we want, and that's the exact blue zone that you highlighted, what we want is people bringing in capital only within the zones where we know trading happens.
Yeah.
If you have capital that sits way outside, if you're trying to sell AVAX at $100 today, it's not liquidity that anybody can use, right?
Yeah.
However, having liquidity that is near the market is extremely valuable. Therefore, we created these dynamic bands within which, if you provide liquidity, you receive incentives. These incentives are our own token emissions, as well as our partner token emissions, such as the Avalanche Foundation, or any projects that we would be listing in the future as well.
So you've got a max limit, a min limit
yes,
that's
go
applied with. Yeah, go into that a little bit, because I think a lot of people who have used Dexalot, they may not completely understand the benefits of this. And what we're looking at on screen there, guys, it's kind of hard to see, but I want to show you. See that little almost glowing blue section? That's what he's referencing right there, is where these incentives occur, both on the order book. So explain the max limit and the min limit. How does that work?
Okay, so think of it this way, right? If you want to trade $1, it's easy to trade because you have a lot of capital already in the blue zone. But if you want to trade $100,000 or $1 million, now you have to clear many of those orders provided by other people.
Yeah.
And your price is going to get gradually worse. What we want to do is we want to concentrate the most amount of liquidity for you to trade that large size near the mid price. The mid price is that green number in the middle on the left.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the idea is the closer the liquidity is to the fair market price of an asset, the more valuable it is, right? Now, going into the formula a bit, and please hold me accountable if I'm becoming too technical. The idea is we will rank you on the amount of dollars or amount of tokens that you're going to place near that mid price, the fair price.
Okay.
We're going to value you how long you stay there. And then we're going to value on how close you are, how long you stay, and how large the amount you're putting on is. So that's one ranking. Then we rank people on how much activity they do. I mean, how much trading they do. And then we have a small kicker for holding some of our tokens, which gives you overall ranking. Yeah. Obviously, this ranking gets better if your liquidity quality is higher. You don't necessarily have to trade. If your liquidity is great, you still receive rewards, right? And then at the end of the month, we rank everyone and we distribute incentives. Instead of bringing in just...
right now.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. And that score you see is the formula that I tried to highlight. And then based on those scores, you receive a ranking and you receive a corresponding reward. This works quite well. A last point I'll make before I stop. This works quite well because market makers are all formulaic and systematic driven people, right? They need to see a clear path to monetizing the service they're providing, which is the liquidity. And then people who need to trade love this as well, because when they trade, they get a little bit of a rewards, plus they get this amazing incentivized liquidity, that's concentrated for them, and it's continuously there to trade at the best possible price. And that's what's really driving, one of the key factors driving our volume.
Why have we not seen other DEXs do this? Because this is a very unique feature that I would think could be applied to almost any DEX out there.
Absolutely.
Why not?
So there are two reasons. One, capital efficiency is very low on non-clubs. So almost all of the exchanges that you've seen that come since 2017 have been AMM style exchanges. They need to have capital, more importantly than anything. And you've actually seen this quite a bit. Once the incentives wear out and once the capital deployers realize that they're no longer earning money, that capital goes away, right? You see from capital fleeting from one AMM to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. It's sort of become a goal of just tracking incentives. With that said, centralized exchanges do similar stuff, but not exactly. We have this unique ability to do it because we're an L1, because we can serve it out to other places where we receive a lot of volume. And then, our tech is quite innovative, and that's what differentiated us. I actually expect this type of a program to become a lot more prevalent in the next few years as more performant blockchains appear.
Yeah, I think that will. It seems natural to for those kinds of incentives to be in play, because that's going to draw in the right kind of liquidity that you need. I want to jump back to the supported networks. Let me jump back over here just so everybody knows.
Yes.
The potential here, because some of the ones that we've looked at, you mentioned Solana. What about something like XRP? If you look at XRP, you could also look at Polkadot. Polkadot would be another one that would be an excellent network to go into. What about those?
So far, we've only expanded into EVM compatible solutions. Okay. Solana is going to be potentially the first non-EVM solution we are.
Yeah.
And real answer here is there is no reason why we can't do any of these networks. Okay. If there is a use case, if our community is asking for it, and if there is volume and capital efficiency needed on those networks, I can tell you now that yes, we will do them.
Well, you guys heard it right now. For you XRP army out there, you guys can start pounding the Dexalot Twitter account.
Let us know. Send us feedback.
Let them know. All right, so let's get into a couple of other things. There were some Arena tokens that are started to roll out. We're seeing a little bit of activity back on this. We had this concept of, just for you guys' awareness, so Arena is kind of like, think of it like an influencer token. It'd almost be if I was a gamer and I wanted to bring my own token out, the ability to have those tokens offered up on, say, a Dexalot. You look at the success of Off the Grid, which is an Avalanche game. We're most likely to see more and more gaming from Avalanche, which means there's a potential here for other ecosystems to start to go in. What about that moving into the Dexalot ecosystem in terms of supported tokens?
Absolutely. So I love the Arena guys. I've met them multiple times. The guys who took it over, and there is no absolutely applause. They've done a great job, because Arena was not in a good place at one point, right? Mm-hmm. And they literally turned it around, and they are the last strong group standing, and I think they're going to succeed. With that said, we absolutely would love to list them. We had this conversation with them multiple times. The timelines didn't work out perfectly, but we have this conversation that is active and it's ongoing. I can't promise anything, but like I said, I love those guys. I believe they basically allowed people to monetize attention and content in a very unique way, and we would love to have them as a partner as well. And we're, I'll say we're working on it.
Yeah, well, listen, you're going to see a lot. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, especially as we see truly decentralized social media start to propagate out there. Even though we're having a little bit of a slow run on it, I think there is an evolution that is going to happen for that, so it would apply. Let's talk about the token utility and the economy. Explain a little bit about the ALOT token. People ask about this token all the time. Give us more insight.
Yes, absolutely. So first and foremost, our token is our gas token, okay? If you think about any layer one solution, the main token is the gas token, and every time you do anything on that network, in our case, we're an exchange. Therefore, when you enter an order, when you cancel an order, or when you do a trade, you have to use a little bit of our token to get that transaction or that action to be recorded on the blockchain and be persisted, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about token economies, though, it's really not too complicated. Hopefully I don't get slaughtered for this comment, but in reality, it's basically a dynamic between supply and demand, right? We essentially created a mechanism that deflates the supply as we give out incentives in the network, meaning on a monthly basis, we reward people who give us great liquidity in our network. I shouldn't say us, who give our takers, people who need to trade, good liquidity, and they get rewarded at the end of the month. However, while they're providing this liquidity, they have to do activity on the network, which translates to reduction in supply, right? Right now, we are in this very unique position where every time a market maker integrates with us, you will see a big uptick in the activity of the network. The more competition there is in our platform, the more transactions are going to go through. We also solve the UX problem. I get this quite often. Let me touch on that. People say, oh, I don't want to buy your token to do a trade. You don't have to. We have a nice UX feature under the covers. It will actually give you the appropriate amount of tokens to do the trade. So a trader doesn't need to even know we have a token or we're a separate network.
Okay.
But going back to the market maker point, the more participants, not even market makers, the more participants we have, the stronger our supply reduction would be, which would allow us to give out more and more rewards. So we literally created this initial circular economy that with more activity really snowballs. And that's just the current state. We've actually seen some very innovative approaches to further pull in the community through the use and additional utility of the token. And I can say that we're very actively thinking about how further we can evolve the economy and the utility to, make the community a little bit more active and reward people a little bit more, and of course make our solution even more, better than what it is already. So
well,
that's the future.
One of the ways to do that is just follow Jupiter's lead. I mean, these guys, this DAO is probably, I would say, one of the best out there. I mean, look at the unique addresses right now, 620,000. And if you look at the activity within this for voting within the governance, I do it. I mean, and I'm lazy. So they make it easy to a certain extent to go out there and participate, which again gets back into that. What about moving into more governance and also the Launchpad, capability? That of course opens up a whole new layer. What about that kind of strategy for Dexalot?
So I'll tell you right now. First of all, I absolutely disagree that you are lazy. The content and the type of stuff that you guys are doing is amazing. I absolutely don't believe any of that. But I'll tell you this, and most people are lazy. Governance, we've already know that if it's just governance, does not work. People initially may care, but eventually they fall off. However, I'm a big believer of incentive alignment, right? If there is incentives for people to vote, then they're going to vote every time. That's what you're seeing with Jupiter. That's what you're seeing with Aerodrome, all great products out there. And again, you are perfectly dialed into the pulse. We are actively looking at solutions. So governance has always been on our white paper. Okay, it's always been part of our plan because we're a network. We would like to give people the ability to run their own nodes because we're an L1. We want to sort of open it up further, right? Which Avalanche allows. But again, creating the appropriate incentive structure, creating the appropriate flywheel that ultimately accrues the value to the people doing the work is the tricky part, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a legal and regulatory perspective. And that's literally what we're working on. That's literally what we're banging our heads against right this second. We'll have a lot more clarity, I think, in 2025, but absolutely we'll do them all, if you will.
All right. So the other thing I have to ask is, the app. You look at the benefit of what we've seen out there. Uniswap, of course, kind of leads the game with it. But Jupiter goes out. They launched their mobile app, which just happened, just October 8th. So this is just now going. The likelihood of Cetus, what about with Dexalot? Will we see an app coming soon?
Yeah, so we when we had this initial conversation about should we do an app or should we aim to optimize our interface, the web-based interface for mobile, the decision at the time we made was, listen, everybody has a browser. Will people want to install an app or will people want to just go to a web page and do it because they're already in their Chrome or Mozilla or Safari, right? So we went initially with a mobile optimized web page. However, the mobile application is still an item on the roadmap. It's not currently the one that we're working on. But as our UI gets better and as we get better and better feedback, I think a mobile application is definitely in the cards as well. Yeah. As we grow, I think it's not even a question because Coinbase is the barometer of if we're in a bull market or not, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that is a good argument though, because this is one thing that we're in the midst of trying to build a Web3 product, and the question it always comes into the app ecosystem, and then of course let's just say it, the gatekeepers of those app ecosystems that usually cause some challenges within it, especially with a Web3 product. So that in itself could be a scenario. So it's interesting that you talk a little bit more about the mobile web, because that I think is still a viable option for a lot of companies that are developing, even though the apps are super slick and if they're done right, it can really draw in a lot of users. So it's kind of a catch-22 for sure.
So the very interesting thing about UX that we found is that the more clicks you insert on the path, the harder it ends up being for maintaining the users. This is very true in capital markets as well. My background is capital markets. I've done a lot of FX algorithmic trading type stuff. I had a lot of clients who asked me, hey, you need me to enter 3 parameters. Can you just give me a button I press and you decide everything else?
Right.
Mobile application and a web page solution is kind of exactly that, right? Do we make people install an application, go to their application and do stuff, or are they already in their browser and do the mobile? I think you need both because the audiences are separate. But for now, we elected to go with the optimized web page, and then hopefully the mobile app will follow in the future, as you
Okay,
suggest.
well, there, you guys heard it here. Dexalot's going to drop the app.
I'm going to get in trouble when I go back to the team.
They're definitely going to put your feet to the fire now. Yes. Listen, we've been here with the head of strategy coming in from Dexalot. You guys ask about this all the time, but of course, thank you so much for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Paul. Pleasure.
You bet. All right, so you guys get into the Diamond Circle, and again, this is another place where you can join our own community. I drop additional content over there, more podcasts, additional research, all that good stuff. Just by joining that, we send out an email, I think 3 times a week right now. So that's a way to keep up to what's happening here on PBN, and of course, follow me on X @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.